In October of 1942, you're picked up for drunk driving in Santa Monica and are placed on probation. When you break that probation only 2 months later, you react violently to being put in jail.
In Hollywood's golden age, studios didn't just hire actors, they controlled them. Contracts, image shaping, and strict rules defined their lives. In this video, we look at 10 real cases where the system pushed stars to the breaking point. From total control to careers, and sometimes lives, cut far too short.
I just came back to do one more picture, and I hope that you all will like it very, very much. I would like to be known as a serious actress and not as a thick girl.
1. Judy Garland, MGM. Judy Garland's rise inside MGM began in 1935, when the studio signed her at just 13. From the start, executives viewed her not as a child, but as a long-term investment. To control her screen image, MGM's medical staff placed her on a cycle of stimulants to keep her awake during long shooting days and barbiturates to force her to sleep at night. This regimen began in her teenage years and became a constant part of her working life. During The Wizard of Oz in 1939, Garland faced an exhausting schedule. Costume restrictions, makeup reapplications under hot lights, and strict limitations on food. Studio head Louis B. Mayer openly criticized her appearance, creating deep insecurity that followed her into adulthood. By the mid-1940s, Garland had endured multiple breakdowns, hospital visits, and suspensions for being unreliable, a label that ignored the system that caused her collapse. MGM refused to loosen her workload and treated her as replaceable property. In 1950, after 15 years of relentless control, the studio terminated her contract. Garland left MGM physically exhausted, chemically dependent, and emotionally devastated. Her later career carried the scars of an adolescence shaped not by talent alone, but by a studio machine that pushed her past every limit she had. 2. Frances Farmer, Paramount. Frances Farmer entered Hollywood with extraordinary promise. After stage acclaim in Seattle and New York, she signed a 7-year contract with Paramount in 1935. Yet her refusal to play the publicity game quickly placed her at odds with the system. Farmer rejected artificial studio romances, refused staged photo ops, and questioned the quality of roles assigned to her. In an era where obedience was survival, her independence was treated as defiance. By 1942, after several public incidents, including an arrest for disorderly conduct, tabloids seized on her troubles with sensational headlines. Studios contributed by distancing themselves from her, allowing scandal sheets to define her image. In early 1943, a court sent her for psychiatric evaluation. What followed was years of harsh institutionalization. Farmer underwent insulin shock therapy, hydrotherapy, and prolonged confinement at Western State Hospital, treatments now considered barbaric. Paramount did not intervene or protect its contract player. Instead, the studio dissolved her value and allowed her career to vanish. When Farmer finally left institutional care in the 1950s, Hollywood had moved on. Her case remains one of the starkest examples of how quickly the studio system could abandon a star who failed to fit its mold, and how the industry's silence could be as destructive as open aggression. 3. John Garfield, Warner Brothers, and HUAC. John Garfield's career represents the collision between Hollywood power and Cold War politics. Signed to Warner Bros. In 1939, he became one of the studio's most reliable leading men, bringing gritty realism to films like Body and Soul and Force of Evil. Off-screen, Garfield associated with progressive groups and supported anti-fascist causes, positions common among actors of the period. Everything changed in 1951 when the House Un-American Activities Committee summoned Garfield to testify. He denied Communist Party membership and refused to accuse colleagues. Though he complied with the hearing, his refusal to name names triggered an unofficial blacklist. Warner Brothers, fearing government pressure, distanced itself from one of its own stars. By 1952, Garfield found himself barred from major studio productions. Once a top-billed actor, he was now confined to minor stage work and small independent films. The emotional toll was severe. He separated from his wife, struggled with insomnia, and lived under constant surveillance rumors. On May 21, 1952, at just 39, Garfield died of a heart attack while still in the shadow of the blacklist. For many historians, his fate illustrates how Hollywood, when threatened, protected its power before it protected its people. 4. Dorothy Dandridge, Fox and Industry Racism. Dorothy Dandridge's story is one of extraordinary talent colliding head-on with the racial barricades of the studio era. Born in 1922, she spent the 1940s performing in Hollywood clubs and small film roles until Carmen Jones, 1954, catapulted her to national fame. Her Academy Award nomination for Best Actress made her the first black woman to reach the top tier of Hollywood recognition. But the celebration ended quickly. Fox, the studio behind Carmen Jones, refused to cast Dandridge as a romantic lead opposite white actors, an unofficial but strictly observed industry taboo. Scripts offered to her were either stereotyped caricatures or exoticized side characters designed to highlight her race rather than her abilities. Meanwhile, major studios continued hiring white actresses in blackface for roles she could have carried with ease. Outside film sets, segregation laws barred her from staying in hotels where she performed. Nightclub contracts demanded brutal touring schedules because the film industry offered her no sustained employment. By the early 1960s, roles had evaporated, her finances collapsed, and she struggled with depression. On September 8, 1965, Dorothy Dandridge died at 42. The autopsy listed an embolism, though an accidental overdose was long suspected. Her career remains one of Hollywood's clearest examples of how the system lifted a black star into the spotlight, then refused to let her grow beyond the limits it imposed. 5. Bette Davis, Warner Brothers. When Bette Davis signed with Warner Bros. In 1932, she was ambitious, sharp-tongued, and determined to fight for quality roles. The studio, however, had different priorities. Throughout the mid-1930s, Davis found herself assigned to a string of films she considered beneath her talent. Formula melodramas and low-tier thrillers designed to fill studio schedules rather than advance an actor's artistry. By 1936, tension reached a breaking point. Davis fled to England and accepted offers from British producers, believing her Warner contract invalid outside the United States. Warner Bros. Immediately sued her in a UK court. The case, Warner Bros. v. Nelson, ended with a ruling that forced Davis to return to the studio under the same restrictive terms. Warner executives responded with a mixture of punishment and indifference, suspension without pay, penalty roles, and public statements portraying her as ungrateful. Yet, Davis continued fighting. She delivered critically acclaimed performances in Jezebel, 1938, and Dark Victory, 1939, becoming one of Warner's biggest stars. Ironically, after years of conflict with the very studio that tried to control her. Her battle symbolizes the early cracks in the studio system. A performer openly challenging contract tyranny long before it became publicly understood. 6. Olivia de Havilland, Warner Brothers. Olivia de Havilland's struggle with Warner Bros. Reshaped American entertainment law. Signed in 1936, she quickly gained attention, but the studio repeatedly assigned her one-dimensional ingenue roles. The parts she truly wanted, layered, challenging characters, came only when Warner loaned her to other producers, including David O. Selznick for Gone with the Wind, 1939. When de Havilland began rejecting roles she felt degraded her artistry, Warner used a standard but deeply abusive tactic: contract suspension. For every refusal, the studio paused her 7-year contract, intending to extend her obligation indefinitely. By 1943, she was trapped, already 7 years under contract, yet legally bound for several more. Refusing to accept this, de Havilland filed suit on August 23, 1943. On December 8, 1944, the California Court of Appeal ruled in her favor. The decision, later known as the de Havilland Law, ended the practice of indefinite contract tolling and struck a major blow to studio power. Although she paid a price, blacklisting, few roles during the lawsuit, and years of tension, she ultimately won one of the most important legal victories in Hollywood history. 7. Peg Entwistle, RKO, and the Machine of Rejection. Peg Entwistle's Hollywood story moved at a pace as fast as it was unforgiving. Born in Wales in 1908 and raised in New York, she became a respected Broadway actress by the late 1920s. Her talent caught the attention of RKO, which cast her in the ensemble thriller 13 Women, 1932. Early preview screenings, however, received mixed reactions, and the studio abruptly re-edited the film. Surviving notes and comparisons between early drafts and the released cut show that Peg's role, originally substantial, was heavily reduced. The disappointing reception affected her prospects. RKO chose not to renew her contract, and during the summer of 1932, she experienced a cascade of casting rejections across Los Angeles. Living with relatives, uncertain about her future, she confronted the reality of a system where a single setback could close every door. On the evening of September 16, 1932, Peg left home and made her way toward the Hollywoodland sign in Beechwood Canyon. What happened next entered Hollywood history. She was found near the landmark, and the discovery immediately became headline news. Newspapers framed her as a fallen starlet, despite the fact that she had only appeared in one film and had never been given a real chance. Peg Entwistle's story quickly became an early symbol of Hollywood's harsher truths. It showed how even a talented, trained actress could be sidelined by a single studio decision, and how the pressure of sudden, total career rejection could overwhelm someone who had barely begun. 8. Lupe Vélez, RKO and Universal. Lupe Vélez entered Hollywood in 1927 with unmistakable energy. Her mix of sharp comedic instincts and emotional depth made her one of the most dynamic young performers of her era. But as her fame grew, the studios began reshaping her image. Executives at RKO and Universal pushed her toward an exaggerated persona they branded the Mexican Spitfire. Loud, fiery, unpredictable. The character sold tickets, but it also boxed her into a stereotype that overshadowed her real range. Throughout the 1930s, Vélez appeared in more than 40 films, eventually leading the Mexican Spitfire series from 1939 to 1943. While successful, the franchise locked her into one role, the hot-tempered heroine whose accent and reactions were played for laughs. Publicity departments reinforced this image off-screen as well, encouraging magazines to portray her private life as dramatic and impulsive. Instead of protecting her from caricature, the system amplified it. By the early 1940s, Vélez found herself professionally cornered. She wanted serious, dramatic parts, yet Hollywood saw her only through the lens it had created. At the same time, she faced personal pressures, unstable finances, demanding schedules, and relationships that attracted constant media attention. In December 1944, at just 36, Lupe Vélez passed away. Reports at the time described emotional strain and exhaustion, shaped by years of typecasting and public scrutiny. Today, her life is often viewed as a powerful example of how the studio system could elevate a performer to worldwide fame while limiting her to a single, rigid identity she never truly chose. 9. Clara Bow, Paramount and the Cost of Being It. Clara Bow, born in 1905, became the definitive sex symbol of the 1920s after starring in It, 1927. Her natural charisma made her Paramount's top box office draw, but behind her, popularity lay an unsustainable workload. In 1925 alone, she appeared in roughly 15 films, split between her collapsing independent company Preferred Pictures and Outside Loans, an extraordinary pace even by silent-era standards. Paramount capitalized on her fame, marketing Bow as the embodiment of modern youth. Yet, no star was more exposed to tabloid sensationalism. Rumors about her upbringing, fabricated scandals, and attacks on her personal life flooded newspapers. Many of these stories were fueled by disgruntled former associates and studio-connected gossip columns. The pressure intensified as sound films arrived. Although Bow transitioned successfully with The Wild Party, 1929, her anxiety worsened under the technical demands of early sound production. By 1931, amid contract disputes and a public nervous breakdown, Bow abruptly left Hollywood. She attempted a minor comeback in 1932, but, traumatized by years of scrutiny and overexploitation, retired permanently at only 27. Clara Bow's story is less about scandal and more about burnout, a star consumed by a studio system that prioritized output over well-being. 10. Gene Tierney, 20th Century Fox. Gene Tierney's rise at 20th Century Fox was meteoric. Born in 1920, she became one of the studio's brightest stars in the 1940s, delivering iconic performances in Laura, 1944, and Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, the latter earning her an Academy Award nomination. Yet, behind the elegant facade lay a growing struggle Fox could neither fix nor publicly acknowledge. Throughout the 1940s, Tierney was under immense pressure to maintain an immaculate screen image. Refined, poised, emotionally controlled. Fox guarded her publicity carefully, presenting her as the epitome of sophistication. But her personal life fractured in 1943 when she contracted rubella while pregnant, reportedly after an infected fan broke quarantine to attend a USO event. Her daughter Daria was born severely disabled. Tierney concealed much of this trauma from the public, encouraged by a system that demanded perfection. By the early 1950s, her mental health deteriorated sharply. In 1953, she withdrew from John Ford's Mogambo and underwent extensive psychiatric treatment, including multiple rounds of electroconvulsive therapy, standard at the time but now considered harsh and often traumatic. Fox offered little support beyond professional distancing. Tierney's career slowed dramatically by the late 1950s, not from lack of talent, but from an environment incapable of recognizing or accommodating emotional collapse. Her story stands as one of Hollywood's quiet tragedies, shaped as much by the era's expectations as by the studio's inability to help. In the golden age of Hollywood, studios created icons and controlled every part of their lives. Some stars pushed back, others couldn't escape, and their stories remind us that behind the glamour, fame often came at a heavy cost.